はい、皆さん、こんにちは。ようこそドイツパビリオンへ。Hello everyone, welcome to Germany Pavilion. 皆さんお元気ですか？なんか反応がない。大丈夫？皆さんお元気ですか？大丈夫そうですね。今日は最高気温29度って言ってるんですけれども、実際この万博会場内は4度ぐらい高くて大体33度ぐらいって言われているので、水分補給は曇りでもちゃんとなさってください。Well, today's high will be 29 Celsius degrees or 84 degrees Fahrenheit. It feels so hot and humid and sticky. Okay, so be sure to stay hydrated. 皆さん水分補給忘れずに行ってください。ではここで私から皆さんに質問です。I have a small question. このドイツパビリオンの合言葉って皆さんご存知ですか？ Do you know our catchphrase of Germany Pavilion? You said something. What did you say? Wow, that's right. Well, actually, it's written on the wall. 壁に書いてありますね。和が私たちのキャッチフレーズです。和は循環の和、サークルの和ですね。あと調和の和、あと和っていう時の驚きの和を指しています。What means circle and harmony in Japanese and wow. So I hope you will feel the wow moment, well, I must say wow moment at the Germany Pavilion at the Expo 2025. なのでちょっとこの和を使って皆さんとちょっと挨拶の練習をしたいと思います。すごく古典的な挨拶です。私がこんにちって言ったら皆さん和って言ってください。いいですか？ Okay, if I say こんにち、you say what? Okay, you might have heard the word こんにちは meaning hi in Japanese, right? ではちょっと練習します。いきますよ。皆さんこんにち。はい、もう一回 louder。皆さん声もうちょっと頑張って出してください。お腹からいきますよ。皆さんこんにち。Okay, next level. 次のレベルです。私、昭和世代なので、和っていうとね、頭の上でこう輪っかを作りたくなるんです。なので今度は、こんにちはのタイミングで皆さん頭の上で輪っかを作ってください。Okay, next time if I say こんにち、you say what, and raising your hand above your head, make a circle like this. Okay, let's give it a try. では、いきますよ。皆さん、こんにち。Beautiful. One more time. 皆さん、こんにち。ありがとうございます。さて、この後のステージをちょっと皆さんに紹介しますね。この後のステージでは、東京にあるドイツ日本研究所の皆さんによる特別セッションをお届けします。Well, up next on stage, we are thrilled to welcome the team from the German Institute for Japanese Studies in Tokyo. で、テーマなんですけれども、サステナビリティとデジタルトランスフォーメーションです。メンバー5人がそれぞれの研究テーマを分かりやすくご紹介します。そんなに難しく考えないでくださいね。Their special session is all about sustainability and digital transformation, and the 5 researchers will be sharing their current work covering exciting topics like the metaverse, the digitalization of health, the role of pets in society, and the green transformation, and even the history of the Expo. で、テーマはメタバース、ヘルスケアのデジタル化、社会におけるペットの役割、で、グリーントランスフォーメーション、そして万博の歴史です。ドイツと日本を比較しながら、私たちの未来について考えるきっかけになるかもしれませんので、どうぞ楽しみながら見てください。Okay, all with a fascinating comparison between Germany and Japan. So we hope you enjoy the session.
ありがとう。こんにちは。はじめまして。みんなお元気ですか？ありがとうございます。今日は何が楽しいことがしましたか？パビリオンの。もうドイツパビリオン見たことありますか？まだ？見ました。どうでしたか？よかった。私たちはまた後で。はい。Hi, well, my name is Barbara, and I'll be the moderator of today's session. And us four here, we're going to take you for the next 2 hours into our exciting research, as you heard, on sustainability and digital transformation. But first of all, who are we and how come we're here? So let me introduce my colleagues. There's Nicole. There's Isaac and Franz. Right. So, どうぞ. All right. But we actually come from many different places in the world, right? So you see here Germany and you see the US, right? So there's Hamburg in the north, Landau, Stuttgart, and Maine in the US. So now, 皆さんの出身のことですね。じゃあ、例えば私の出身はどっちでしょう？どう思いますか？どう思いますか？私はハンブルク、ランダウ、シュトゥッガート、カメイン。どっち？そうです。すごい。ピンポン。おめでとうございます。はい、そうです。私は北の方なので。はい。じゃあ、who do you think comes from Maine? メインは誰でしょう？じゃあ、Isaac comes from Maine, right? And we have Nicole and Franz, and they're really close. Franz comes from Landau, Nicole comes from Stuttgart. All right. So even though we come all from many different places, we all fell in love with Japan. Right? And we all did our PhDs on something related to Japan and are now working together at the Deutsche Nihon Kenkyujo. So the German Institute for Japanese Studies, or in German, Deutsches Institut für Japanstudien. And the acronym, as you see on our t-shirts, is DIJ. All right. So we all worked for many years together already. We're a great team. And yesterday, we boarded the Shinkansen and came here to Osaka. So we would like to thank the German Pavilion for having us here. We'd like to thank the Pavilion Director, Christopher Hecker. And we also like to thank Voss and Fischer, who are organizing here this event stage, in particular, Markus Illing. So, and he's right there. so we each, as it was explained, we're taking our turns and explain you a little bit on our kojintekki na kenkyu no koto, our individual research, and we wrap up the discussion on sustainability and the future. And you heard already, we're talking about the Expo history, so Expo no rekishi, the Metaverse, Metaverse, about the green transformation, and about animals and their relationship to humans and their position on this planet. But first of all, right, we're going to have Franz explain you a bit about the German Institute for Japanese Studies. Franz Waldenberger, dozo, actually is our director. He's our boss. and has been leading the Institute for actually 11 years. So, Franz, before you start, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, like a little bit of jiko shokai? How did you get interested in Japan?
It's a very long story because I think I'm the oldest here on stage. So the first time I came to Japan, 日本に初めて来ましたのは44年前です。81年。So 81. No? So I was a student. I didn't speak any Japanese. And I thought culture shock is something for old people. Young people like me at the time, there's no culture shock. I came to Japan and suddenly I realized, oh, what is a culture shock? It was so different. But I must say I fell in love with the country and I wanted to know more, and that's where I am now. Thank you.
Thank you, Franz. Well, later you will tell us a lot about green transformation, but what other things have you mostly focused upon in your research on Japan? You're a 経済学者, an economist.
そう、僕は経済学者、普通の経済学者ではありません。普通の経済学者は狭い分野集中してます。私は広い分野、日本経済という広い分野を研究してます。So I'm studying Japan, Japanese economy, that's my, well, I've been looking at the Japanese economy more than 30 years. And I must say, it's never been boring. Lots of things happening in Japan, yeah? Maybe not so good for Japan, but it's very interesting. 学者にとってとても面白いことが日本経済に起こってました。危機も面白いね。学者にとっては研究課題になります。So another topic I'm looking at is corporate governance. Corporate governance ね、企業統治。日本でいますと。
Great. Thank you, Franz. So now please tell everybody a little bit about the Deutsche Nihon Kenkyujo. お願いします。
Okay, so let me see. Yes, of course, we are a German government-funded research institute in Tokyo. And we are part of the Max Weber Foundation. Well, we were founded in 1988, so we are 37 years old. And we are part of the Max Weber Foundation, and you see here the world map, and you see all the other locations of sister institutes. So we are here in Tokyo, and we have an institute in Delhi, we have one in Beirut, Istanbul, Rome, and a few in Europe, London, Paris, Warsaw, and Washington. Yeah, so 11 institutes, and some institutes have branch offices or collaborations. We collaborate with Singapore, National University of Singapore down here.
Franz, great. So there's more?
Well, this is well our research field. So we present two topics today. We look at the digital transformation. We look at questions of sustainability. These are, of course, challenges that both Japan and Germany and many other countries face. Yeah? So we want to learn how Japan is approaching these challenges. And then we have a topic on Japan in trans-regional perspective. That's why we cooperate with Singapore. Yeah, we look at Japan in Asia, but also in the wider global context, especially now with the geopolitical condition. I think that's a very interesting, very important subject. And we have something down here, what's called Knowledge Lab. Knowledge Lab. We try to reflect about the knowledge that we create, the knowledge about Japan. How does it come about? What does it mean? And of course, if you are a Japanese researcher, you will look at Japan in a different way. If you are a French researcher, you will have a different perspective. So we try to reflect these multi-perspectives on Japan in our knowledge lab.
Great. Thank you, Franz. But, you know, can you maybe explain why the German government would establish a research institute like ours in Japan? どうしてドイツ政府がこのドイツ日本研究所を日本に作ったんですか?
So, yes, we are quite unique, I think. So why does the German government put money out to do research in Japan, on Japan? There are, of course, lots of Japanese scholars or scholars on Japan in Germany. But why a research institute in Tokyo? Well, if you look back the slide before, who remembers when DIJ の設立年はいつでした? 覚えてますか? 1988年。So 1988年は日本経済がバブル向かってたんですね。もう世界トップでした。ね、みんなの日本の謎を解きたかったんですよね。So in this sense, in 1988, of course, you didn't have to explain why to have a research institute in Japan. People wanted to learn about Japan. Japan was challenging everybody, yeah, was challenging the world economy. And of course, that didn't last for long, but still today, I think it's very important to learn about Japan, to compare what's happening in Japan and Germany. And that's what we do here. We look at these challenges. And as I said before, the Knowledge Lab, we are social scientists and also scholars in the humanities and social sciences. And it's different from the natural sciences. Yeah, natural sciences, there is a common knowledge. Yeah, there is sort of common scientific knowledge. It's universal. The laws of nature are universal. But in the social sciences, the knowledge depends very much on the context. So politics, society, economy, they function differently in different places. Yeah? And if we want to understand about our society, it's very good to look at others and compare with others. So this is basically the reason why Japan is still important today.
Thank you, Franz. And last question is, can anyone come to the DIJ? Maybe you can just briefly explain what resources and events we do offer. 誰か東京の方いらっしゃいますか？東京、はい。じゃあ、もし東京に来るときは、ぜひ研究所に来てください。And what can you experience at the DIJ?
Well, first of all, visit our website. Yeah, so you can learn a lot on our website about what's going on. We have lots of events. You can subscribe to a newsletter, and you will be informed about everything that's going on. We have open events for the general public. We have a library. We have some special books that no other library has, special books on the history of Japan-German relations. And yes, and if there are any other questions that you would like to discuss, yeah, we are open. And we are in the middle of Tokyo, Chiyoda-ku. We rent space in Sophia University, which you might know. So it's easy to access and visit us.
Yes. Thank you very much, Franz. Great. Thank you. Yes. Well, now let's turn on to Isaac. お願いします。Isaac, you started working at the DIJ in 2017. 2017年で始まったね。
That's correct.
Isaac is an anthropologist. So Isaac は人類学者ですね。Right. So Isaac, what was your PhD work focused on, and why did you become interested in that?
Yeah, so nice to see everyone. So I'm an anthropologist, cultural anthropologist specifically, and my focus was on Japanese religion and ethics. 日本の宗教と倫理の関係についてすごい興味を持っていて、アメリカの宗教と全然違うような秩序があるので、日本と宗教をどういうふうに解釈しているのか、そうアメリカとの違いの比較研究をしたかったんですね。And American, Japanese approaches and attitudes towards religion are very different. So I was interested in how average people, 一般の人たちはどういうふうに宗教を考えているのか。Average people, how do they think about religion? So that's what I wanted to look at, and that's what I did my research on. I looked at a number of different religions, including new religions in Japan, いわゆる新宗教の研究もして、あと伝統的な宗教も研究しました。
Thank you. Well, your research is really broad because he also researched on local communities in rural Japan, on issues of mental health, but we also worked together on a couple of issues, particularly on the last big mega event in Japan, but we'll talk about more later. But what was the last big mega event in Japan? 今は Expo 2025, right? 今年。でもその前は大きいイベント、この世界のイベントはどっちだったんですか？日本に。オリンピック、そうです、オリンピックです。And so we did research on the Olympic, and Isaac stayed also with the topic on the mega events and is now researching this expo. So Isaac, the floor is all yours.
Okay. So I'll be talking about sustainability and the Expo and the history of the Expo in connection with sustainability. But first of all, how many people have heard of SDGs? SDG のご存知の方はいらっしゃいますか？ SDG 聞いたことある？まあ、多数いますね。So this is Sustainable Development Goals, right? Before that, we had MDGs. MDG 聞いたことある方いらっしゃいますか？ This is Millennium Development Goals. それ2000年ぐらいに Millennium Development Goals が設定されて2015年までにこういう 目標を達成するというような、設定あったんですね、国連の方。その前は実はあるんですね。International Development Strategy はあったんです。それは1970年で、その時は、Club of Rome という集まりがいて、で、世界の開発、そして産業化によって環境が発火されているので、どういうふうにそれを、守るためにできるのかっていういろんな考えがあって、それで International Development Strategy が発表されて、それでその後は MDGs、Millennium Development Goals になって、そして SDGs、Sustainable Development Goals。で、MDGs, there's 8 of them, right? 8個があったんですけど、SDGs になると17個あるんですね、17。Each one has 10 sub-goals, or roughly 10。だから一つ一つはその中に10個が入ってるんですね、さらに。で、その中にさらにもっと細かいものもいっぱい入ってるんです。目標ターゲットとして169個あるんですよ、全体的に。すごいいっぱいあるんです。で、その中にまたさらに詳細もあるんです。だからかなり、複雑になってるんですけれども、These SDGs for this Expo are supposed to be very, very important. All Expos now have to talk about what SDGs they are trying to achieve. すべての万博はどのような SDG を目標としてしているのかということは発表しないといけないという義務になっています。Okay, next slide. So, 実はすごい昔になると万博の一番、最初の万博と、言われているのは1851年ロンドン Expo Great Exhibition of London in 1851 the very first exposition officially announced. Now, this exposition was actually also part of an environmental issue that occurred around this time. So, this expo, they were supposed to build the Crystal Palace. The Crystal Palace is this building we see here, became a sort of iconic monumental palace. Crystal Palace が万博のために作られてて、このCrystal Palace は最初の万博の、イメージとして大事な、建設物だったんですね。When they're trying to build it, they wanted to build it in Hyde Park in London. Has anyone been to Hyde Park in London? Hyde Park に行ったことある人ございますか？ロンドンのハイドパーク。So, there were 3 big elm trees in Hyde Park. In order to build the Crystal Palace, they're going to cut the elm trees down. So, 3本の大きな大事な木がその公園にあったんですね。作るためにそれ切らないといけないということになったんです。それで市民が運動をして切らないようにという運動だったんですよ。They pushed the Expo people not to cut down the 3 trees. So what did they do? パクストンという、建築家がクリスタルパラス作ったんですけど、he wanted to make a flat, Joseph Paxton, the architect, wanted to make a flat roof. その代わりに彼は実はまた建設の仕組みを変えて、上になる天井を作ったんですね。He made it a vaulted ceiling, so you could keep the trees inside the Crystal Palace. So he actually redesigned the entire palace so that the trees could stay inside. So this was the first sort of environmental movement related to the Expo to try to protect the environment. Now, この中に実はこういう噴水あるんですね。この噴水は実は1851年の万博のスポンサーもいたんですよ。いろんな企業のスポンサー。その企業の一つは Schweppes. So Schweppes, the beverage company, was one of the major sponsors of the first Olympics. で、Schweppes はこの噴水を自分のラベルに使ってるんですね。だから今でもシュエプスのレーベルを見ると噴水があるんですよ。この噴水、クリスタルパレスの中の噴水。So there's a long history of the Schweppes, the soft beverage company, and the Expo going back to 1851. Now, 万博とこのイギリスのロンドン万博とバナナはどういう関係あるかと言いますと、So, what relationship does the Expo have with bananas? Actually, パクストンという建築家がこのクリスタルパレスを作ったんですね。ただ、彼はもともとデボンシアというところの、その公爵の、庭を、庭師というんですね。庭を世話する人だったんです。で、そのデボンシアの公爵は実はキャベンディッシュという方です。キャベンディッシュがこのバナナを作ったんですね。どこから持ってきて、でそのバナナを作ったんで、パクスタンという人がこのバナナの世話している人です。このバナナは実は今みんな食べているバナナはこのバナナの種類です。これはもともとこの建築家の 2羽から切ったバナナです。すべてはクローンですよ。今のバナナ。で、それは1950年に世界中に普及して、みんな食べているもの、いわゆるホテルバナナと言われています。So, Joseph Paxton, who created the Crystal Palace, he also was the gardener for Lord Devonshire, the Lord of Devonshire, who is Cavendish, was his name. And inside Cavendish's greenhouse, Paxton was the one who cultivated this Cavendish banana. This banana is now the banana that we eat around the world. It's called the hotel banana. It travels very well. And it's since the 1950s, almost every banana you buy in supermarkets is this kind of banana. Okay, so now let's fast forward. 愛知万博行ったことあるんですか？誰か愛知万博に行く方いらっしゃいますか？いますか？愛知万博はもともと海晶の森というところでやるはずだったんですね。They're supposed to do it in 海晶の森。However, 1999年、1999、大鷹の、ね、巣が見つかったんです。大鷹 is a Eurasian goshawk, which was an endangered species at the time. They found the nest in this place. When they found it, they had to completely relocate the expo to a new location. だから海晶の森から別のところに移動しないといけないことになった。This is also because of everyday people rising up and saying we need to protect this environment. The Banpaku, the expo is about protecting the environment. So the entire Banpaku was moved to a new location because of the discovery of this nest in 1999. Okay, next slide. Okay, so since 1974, officially, expos have been related to SDGs. Now, the first sustainability-related expo was actually 1974 in Spokane, Washington. It wasn't an official expo, but it was a special expo, a smaller scale expo. And they had the first official expo-related, sustainability-related expo theme. Since the 2000s, we had the MDGs, Millennium Development Goals, and expos became explicitly related to sustainability. So in 2000, we had the Hanover Expo. In 2005, of course, Aichi Expo. There was a special expo in 2008, and then 2010 Shanghai Expo. All of these were about sustainability. だから2000年からすべてのエクスポ、万博がそういう環境問題とか SDG についての課題が出てきたんですね。そして after 2015, the SDGs were announced. 2015年から SDG が発表されて、そこからすべての万博はどの SDG を目標にするということを設定しないといけないんです。So from then we have every expo stating which SDGs it's going to focus on. Now at the bottom we have the current expo. だから Osaka Banpaku is focusing on number 3 and number 11, which if you see here, it's hard to read, but good health and well-being. And number 11 is sustainable cities and communities. だから今回の万博は3番と11番に中心に目標しています。Okay, now that we've had some serious discussion, 真面目な話も終わって、これは楽しいところ。Okay, これは全部万博のマスコット。すべてが今までのマスコットのすべてがここにあるんですね。ニューオーリンズの1984年のマスコットはどちらだと思いますか？これを思う人。これを思う人。
はい。一人。はい。
これ鳥です。そう。それは See More de Fair。それは万博をもっと見ようという英語でのニュアンスがあるんですね。最初の万博のマスコット。その次は92年のセビル。これだと思いますか？このマスコットは。セビルはこっちです。黒という鳥のマスコットです。じゃあ次はハノーバー。ハノーバーはどちらですか？これですか？これはもう人。これはもう人。これ。そう、これです。トゥイプシーという名前のマスコット。次は愛知。これ。そう、これです。これは愛知のマスコットで、次は上海。これです。ハイバオというマスコットですね。そしてミランは、この3つしかないんですけど、こっちだと思います？こっち？これはミランです。フディという名前のマスコット。そしてドバイ。これですね。ロボット3機と 人間2人で、これはミャクミャク、今回のマスコットです。で、こういうマスクはどういうふうにサステイナブルになるのか、将来にどっちのマスコットが印象に残るかわからないんですけれども、それぞれのマスコットのイメージになってますね。それで、今日の私のところが終わりますので、ありがとうございます。ご清聴を。
Thank you very much, Isaac. もし質問がある方はいらっしゃいますか？いつでもどうぞ。はい。手を挙げてとか、そのままに聞いても、どうぞ。はい。But I have a question, Isaac. So, when was Japan's first involvement in the World Expo?
そう、日本の最初の万博との関係は実はかなり昔です。もう1862年、ロンドンで福沢諭吉と、40人の日本人が、ロンドンに行って、その時に万博が行われていました。だからこれは当時の万博の日本人が参加したというか、視察しましたね、このところで。そして1862年にその万博で、いろんな最初の、機械を見て、新しい産業を見て、すごいびっくりしてて、その情報を日本に持って帰った。So Japan was very first involvement with the Expo was 1862, the London Exposition, one of the great expositions there. And Fukuzawa Yukichi, a very famous Japanese scholar, was one of the attendees along with 40 other Japanese people. Now, since then, we have the 1867 Paris exhibition. だからパリ1860年、67年のパリの万博で、渋沢栄一という、有名な方もいらっしゃったし、その時、アームストロングという、鉄砲みたいな、そういうものがあったんですね。大きなキャノン、アームストロングキャノンがあって、それですごい迫力あった武器で、その情報を日本に持って帰って、もともと薩摩藩と佐賀藩がそれを作って、それを戊辰戦争で使ったんですね。それで、徳川家康を倒して明治維新になったんですね。明治維新後は、1876年という時に、日本が最初の76年の最初のパビリオンがあったんですね。でそれは、フィラデルフィアにもあって、そして、1878年にパリでまた万博に参加して、自分の庭もあったんですね。だからだんだん日本の関係が深くなっていました。
Thank you, Isaac. Well, I have another question, which is, now Japan has a long history of being involved in World Expos, but when was the first time that Japan actually had its own World Expo here in Japan?
Does anyone know when the first time Japan had an expo? 最初の万博は何年ですか？日本の。1970年ですね、大阪。同じ大阪なんですけど、でも実はもともと1940年に万博あったはずだったんですよ。オリンピックと同じ年に開催するはずだったんですけど、戦争があってそれがキャンセルされたんですけれども、実は東京に行くと勝どき橋があるんですよ。勝どき橋はもともと万博の会場の、門として使われる予定だったんですね。でもそれは白紙になって、で1970年になったんです。
はい。So maybe can you tell us a little bit more about all the different exhibitions? You said Osaka was then 1970 the first one, and then we had Aichi, right?
Yeah, so if you look at here, this shows you the number of visitors who came to each expo since the Brussels of 1958. This is post-war expos, as well as the number of participating countries. で、これは参加者の数と、参加している、国の数ですね。And Aichi, so Osaka was 1970, and this actually broke all of the records. すべての記録を破った万博ですね。Most number of visitors, most number of countries. After that, we saw Seville, less visitors, but more countries, right? However, in 2000 was the Hanover. Actually, this was the only expo ever held in Germany. So Germany and Japan, they have a lot of connections, but Japan has far outstripped Germany in terms of expo participation. Now, the 2000 Hanover Expo was actually considered to be a massive failure. It cost a lot of money. It reaped no profits. It saw a record low number of visitors. And it did have the highest number of countries participating, but this left them with a feeling of real dissatisfaction. So, ハノバの万博が、完全に失敗だったというふうに後で評価されたんです。で、それは2000年でインターネットが普及している時。だからみんなはなぜわざわざにハノバに行かないといけないという、疑問もあったし、あともともとその万博のテーマがちょっと曖昧で何があるか全くわからない人が多かったんですね。So people had no real idea what to expect. They didn't go. However, at this point, もう万博が終わりと、世界中にそういう評判があったんですね。ただ、愛知が2005年からあったなので、実は参加している国が下がったんです。ハノバが広かったので、もう参加しなくていいと思ってて。So countries didn't want to really participate. However, the participants were not that high. However, it grew a profit. 黒字になってすごい良かったという評判があって、そして最初の環境問題を配慮している万博というふうに言われたんですね。それで愛知は大成功だったと後で評価された。その後にだんだん他の国も参加するようになって、でまた復活した。So if Hanover was considered to be the end of Expos, Aichi was the rebirth of Expos. So we can also see the German-Japanese connection there.
Great, thank you, Isaac. Now, I mentioned earlier that Isaac, we did research on the Tokyo Olympics. And actually, maybe if you're interested, this is an open access book. だから無料でダウンロードすることができるね。3人でもう出版しました。But I wonder, Isaac, is there any relationship between World Expos and Olympics? I mean, they're both the biggest mega events, but maybe you can.
So the relationship between World Expos and Olympics actually goes back to the 1800s. So 万博とオリンピックは両方とも近代社会の一つの大事な象徴として思われています。So Olympics actually, the idea of the modern Olympics was given birth during an expo or several expos in Europe. だから万博の中で万博が集まっている人たちは1880年ぐらいにいろいろ話し合ってオリンピックもやりましょうという運動が始まったんです。万博の集まっている人たちの中で。それで最初のオリンピックを万博と同時に開催しようという考えがあったんですね。それは1896年にやりましょうというふうになったんですね。もともと1900年パリの万博とパリのオリンピックを両方やろうと思ってたんですけど、多分、グリシャの方は1900年まで待ちたかなかったんです。自分たちのアテナでやりましょうというふうになって、だから最初のオリンピックは1896年なんですけど、第2のオリンピックが1900年でパリ、万博とオリンピックが共同開催されたんですね。So the very first Olympic was supposed to be held in 1900 in Paris with the Paris World Expo. But probably with a lot of political wrangling, the Grecian side said, we don't want to wait until 1900s for Paris. We want to do it ourselves in the birthplace of the Olympics in Athens. So the very first Olympics, modern Olympics, was in 1896. But the second Olympics was in 1900, held together with the World's Fair, the exposition in Paris. その後に、実はオリンピックと万博を共同に同じところでやりましょうという考えあったんですけど、だんだんずれてきました。So they stopped having them together, but originally they're supposed to be held in concert at the same time. So all together, when we look at Olympics and we look at World Expos, both of these mega events are the biggest gatherings of people from around the world in the modern societies that we have, right? So there is no other event that gathers so many different kinds of people, so many different countries, periodically across the years. Of course, there's always political issues. There's always scandals being talked about in Japan too. 日本でもスキャンダルとかいろいろ万博もオリンピックにもいつも話題になるんですけど、あと印象に残ることもいっぱいあるんですね。だからオリンピックも万博も反対しても印象に残るんですね。So these are big events which stay in our memories. No matter if you're for them or you're against them, they become important elements in the modern nation state. And they're always a sign for international competition and coordination, cooperation, right? So 日本国際的な競争と協力の場として考えられるので、そういう関係がすごい深いんですね、オリンピックと万博。
Thank you, Isaac. I have two tiny questions for you left. One is, what were the famous inventions and services from the 1970 Osaka Banpuku, right? The 1970 Osaka Expo.
So every expo is a place for people to advertise new technology, for companies to advertise new services and things like this. It's been the way all the way since the beginning of expos, right? So the Eiffel Tower was designed for the Olympics, right? For the Expo in Paris. Now, the 1970 Osaka Expo, this is where we first saw canned coffee, right? 缶コーヒーが最初に、大阪万博で発売されたんですね。They also had the first, the rise of fast food with Kentucky Fried Chicken. KFC も、大阪万博から始まったんですね、日本の中では。And also, there are more other inventions. For example, the smartphone. So, well, at that time it was the cellular phone, right? So, 携帯電話 it was 最初に大阪万博. Now it's become part of our daily life. And they even had a human washing machine. 人間洗濯機があったんですね。大阪万博。あまり普及してなかったんですけど、またこの万博でもっと新しい人間洗濯があるので、ヘルスケアパビリオンで。だから、まだ見てないんですけど、興味がありますね。
Okay, great. Yeah, and so that's one of the cool innovations that is being reintroduced at this expo. Any other really cool things that you...
So for other things that we see at the expo, well, there's new use of or testing of flying cars, right? We can't ride them yet, but they're testing them. There's new technologies for communications being in the various technology pavilions. And there's also more use of drones. And then we also have new versions of using old architecture. For example, this entire ring, the wooden ring, is trying to find new ways to use traditional architecture in a sustainable way.
Thank you very much, Isaac.
Thank you very much. ありがとうございました。
So now we're going to go to a totally different topic. It's still within the framework of sustainability, but I'd like Franz to come and talk about his research on green transformation. どうぞ。
Well, one big topic in sustainability, of course, is the climate change challenge. Yeah. So the green transformation, or in Japan also GX, and both Germany and Japan, they have very ambitious goals. Yeah, they have very ambitious goals. They want to achieve a carbon neutral society by 2050, so in the near future. So they have the same goals, but they pursue, and they're very ambitious goals. You know, we have to undo the whole fossil fuel infrastructure. That's huge. I mean, we built this infrastructure over more than 200 years, and that has to be undone within a short period of time. Completely new infrastructure. All our economy, society, lots of our daily life is based on fossil fuels, and that has to be undone. So, of course, it's very challenging, and Germany and Japan have the same goals, but they pursue very different strategies to achieve these goals.
Mm-hmm.
So one example, just two examples. Nuclear energy, Denshiroku. So that's one of the old German nuclear power plants. That's a picture of Fukushima after the accident. Fukushima happened, and Germany quit nuclear energy. Well, actually, Germany did not really quit nuclear energy. They already quit nuclear energy in the 1980s because they never built a new nuclear power plant after 1983. Yeah, so, and basically what they decided is that they will stop using the last nuclear power plants after 40 years. 40 years was the operation period guaranteed to the plants operators. And so quitting just meant we don't extend the operation time. And why? Well, they considered it too risky and too expensive. On the other hand, in Japan, nuclear energy, like in many other countries, nuclear energy is part of the green transformation strategy. Why? Japan continues to use nuclear energy. And why? Because just the evaluation is just opposite to the German case. They say it's safe and it's cheap. So we have two highly developed countries with very different assessments of nuclear energy. And that's, of course, something to look into. Yeah. The other example is that, of course, if we want to achieve carbon neutrality, it means that our economic activity must not cause further emissions. Yeah? So, of course, we want to continue our economic activity, but this economic activity should not lead to carbon or greenhouse gas emissions. So, we have to reduce the amount of greenhouse gas per unit of GDP. And it has to be lowered to 0. And actually, surprisingly, when we look at this, we can call this climate efficiency. How much greenhouse gas do you need to produce 1 unit of GDP? Japan, the red line down here, Japan was very efficient. Japan was leading the world in terms of greenhouse gas efficiency. Japan had very little emissions per GDP. Over time, Japan lowered the emissions per GDP a little bit, but all the other countries, they are now catching up. And Germany has even surpassed or underwent the Japanese trend. So the question here is, why is Japan losing the lead? What's happening? What are the others doing in reducing the carbon sort of output per GDP, while Japan is somehow not moving so fast?
Good. Yes, thank you very much, Franz. I have a question. What happened here when it goes up here? It looks like it's at the same time as the Fukushima.
Yeah, sure. It is, of
disaster.
course, because of the Fukushima accident. Japan had, for a short period of time, import more fossil fuels, and that increased the greenhouse gas emissions per GDP. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. One more question?
Yeah.
So Germany now has a new government. About 2 weeks ago, we got a new government. And will Germany's position on nuclear energy, will that change?
Well, some people speculate that it might change, but as I told you, the decision was made 40 years ago. And the German companies who, like Siemens, who had all the technology for building, maintaining nuclear power plants, they no longer have this knowledge, have this capacity. No? So it's not realistic to think that any new German government will restart or reinvest in nuclear power. Actually, because it's also expensive. Now, renewables have become rather cheap, and even countries without any ideology in the US or other parts, they don't just go for nuclear. No, they think about the cost.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Franz. Yeah. Thank you. Now our next speaker will be Nicole with her very, very exciting research, and I'll start that in a second. But maybe 短い自己紹介お願いします。
こんにちは、皆様。私はニコルと申します。よろしくお願いいたします。はい、私は東京のドイツ日本研究所の専任研究員として、今はメタバースと日本人の将来についての考え方との関係についての研究を行っております。今日はその研究について短い紹介させていただきたいと思います。そして皆様の休憩をちょっとでも楽しくさせていただければ嬉しいです。
Thank you, Nicole. Well, actually, Nicole is actually a literature scholar, right? 文学の学者なので。
そうですね、大衆文学。
So, yeah, and so her dissertation was actually on Thomas Mann, right? The German author Thomas Mann, and that how his work was translated into Japanese, and not just one time, not just two times. How many times?
そうですね、まあ、最初にもう一度ちょっと質問させていただきたいんですけど、このまあ、視聴者の間にトーマス・マンを読んだことある方いらっしゃいますでしょうか？本日はちょっといなさそうですね。そうですね。これからはちょっと英語にスイッチしますけど、I'm doing research on Thomas Mann's translations into Japanese, and actually his one famous novel, Tonio Kröger, which has been published in Germany in 1903, has been translated into Japanese 15 times. There are 15 Japanese translations of this one novel. The oldest one is from 1927, and the most recent one is from 2018. And my research is to look at the relationship between the historical context. I mean, 1927 and 2018 are totally different times. And I'm looking at how different those translations are depending on historical context.
Thank you, Nicole. But let's now dive into your current research because that is super exciting. どうぞ。
ありがとうございます。そうですね。今日はちょっと日本とドイツにおけるメタバースの将来像について紹介させていただきたいんですけど、Today I'm going to talk about metaverse futures in Japan and the relationship to Japanese cultures, and of course also about some collaborations between Japan and Germany in the metaverse, because both countries are very famous for their technology. So next slide, please. So, first of all, what is the metaverse? If we're thinking about the metaverse, we're actually talking about various different technologies. For example, we have virtual reality, for which we have to wear a big headset like Apple Vision Pro, you can see here. And virtual reality is very common in gaming. Another example is augmented or mixed reality. And here the most famous example would be games, smartphone games like Pokemon Go. スマホでポケモン GO をプレイされている方いらっしゃいますか？視聴者の。すごいですね。よかったです。ピクミンブルームをプレイされている方いらっしゃいますでしょうか？私だけ一人ぼっちとなっちゃいますけど。Yes, there are a few smartphone games in augmented reality, and this is another characteristic of those metaverse technologies, that they mix reality, physical reality, and digital cyberspace. デジタル空間とリアル空間と融合させる技術はメタバース技術と呼んでいます。You can see that here in the middle of the screen, in the metaverse, you have something similar to social media, to current versions of SNS. So you can meet your friends from online, basically in the real space, and you can feel as they were actually close to you, like physically close to you. This brings me to another example from metaverse technologies, which is digital twin. This means creating a digital copy of real things, like, for example, real cities and so on, in digital cyberspace. And in that context, Japan has introduced the concept of Society 5.0, 5.0, which is a cyber-physical super smart society. And here, metaverse technologies are a central part of the cyber-physical future. Next slide, please. So, I've been talking a bit about digital twin technologies. And here we have some very interesting metaverse use cases based on digital twin. One example here would be Digitaler Zwilling Deutschland, Digital Twin Germany, which is planned to be released next year in 2026. Another, maybe even more interesting example would be Project Plateau, which is a project by the Japanese government in collaborations with various Japanese corporations. And Project Plateau consists of a huge digital twin of more than 200 Japanese cities at the moment, of course also including Tokyo and Osaka. And the interesting and very cool thing here is that you can access those digital twins via the QR code here. They have a website, and you can look at the digital twins of those cities. You can look, for example, at the traffic flow, at the weather, at everything basically. And this brings me to why create these digital twins? The answer is it's for simulations. You use them, for example, for urban planning, for planning of the city, but also for disaster preparedness. And this is also why Japan's digital twin project is already much further progressed compared to the German digital twin project, because 日本はなんか大震災は結構多いんですね。In Japan, we have a lot of natural disasters, and therefore Japan needs these digital twins to better prepare for evacuation and what to do in case of disaster. But of course, we don't only have this type of metaverse technologies for infrastructure, we also have a metaverse for industry. And here we have a very, very high profile collaboration happening between Japan and Germany. Just this year, in January 2025, Sony has released a VR headset. You can see a little bit of it here. In collaboration with Siemens from Germany, and Siemens has created software exclusively for this headset. And here we are also creating digital twins, but not of cities or buildings, but instead, for example, of cars, of machine components. And by using these digital twins, we can more flexibly design these things, we can engineer these things without using any real materials or resources. So I've been talking about infrastructure, about the industrial metaverse, but of course we can also ask ourselves, what will the metaverse do to our society? How will it change society? And one very interesting example here is the loneliness crisis in Japan. 日本では孤独はものすごく大きな社会的な問題なんですね。Here we have, for example, as I said, social media in the metaverse, like the metaverse basically being a bigger augmented version of social media and thus allowing you to make online friends. But another example would be virtual pets and companions. And we have one very cute example here of such virtual pets, which you see through your headsets, and you can take care of them, you can play with them, and yeah, feel less lonely because of that, hopefully. Next slide. So, today I've shown you a little bit of my research into the metaverse. I've shown you the metaverse for infrastructure, for industry, some international collaborations, and of course also the effect of the metaverse on society. But actually, what I want you to remember is that it isn't the technology, the metaverse technology itself, that creates the future. Instead, it's the way how you think about the future and about the metaverse, your hopes, dreams, fears, and expectations that create the future. So, 皆様と共に未来のメタバースを一緒に作ることできることを心から願っております。ご清聴ありがとうございました。Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Nicole. Fascinating. もし質問がある方、ぜひ聞いてください。
一言のコメントなどでも全然大丈夫です。
ぜひ。Of course, I have several questions, if I may. So, Nicole, you're not an engineer, you're not a programmer. We heard you're a humanities scholar. And why do you think it's really important to have people in the humanities or social sciences who should also study technologies on the metaverse?
Yeah, of course, there's this common misconception that only people who create these technologies themselves, who are engineers and programmers, should be able to talk about those technologies. But as I've shown you, the changes these technologies bring to us, bring to society, do not only influence like engineers and so on, but they affect everybody. Everybody will feel the influence of these technologies. And here I think it's very important that people who are independent from the industry, so I don't make money with the metaverse. That's why I'm able to speak freely about the effects, maybe also about the risks the metaverse brings to our society. And I think that's a viewpoint we also should integrate.
Thank you. But what role does age or gender play with regard to the metaverse? Will it be the same for everybody?
Yeah, that's a very important point. So I've been telling you a little bit about virtual reality as maybe the most famous metaverse technology. And virtual reality is still strongly associated with gaming and therefore with men, with male people, who are mostly younger or middle-aged and less with women, I think. But I think augmented and mixed reality, like being more open technologies, could also bring some change here. And in addition to that, there are examples for use cases which have elderly people in mind. For example, if you're, I'm already experiencing it, if you are getting a little forgetful, if you don't know where you put, for example, the sugar in your shelf, then you can have this augmented reality app telling you, oh, you put the sugar there or anything like that. But the problem here is that older people might feel a sort of hesitation towards technology, also because like PR, like the advertising, mainly features young people, so they don't feel addressed by the technology. And this also the same goes for people, especially with physical disabilities, who might hugely profit from metaverse technologies, but aren't featured in the advertising. So that's something we have to work on, I think.
Mm-hmm. So, well, the big players in that technology are really American, US companies, right? And can metaverse initiatives by Japan or Germany even make a difference?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we have to be realistic. The big players are Apple, Meta, maybe Google, and of course they dominate the market. But as I've shown you, we also have big players in Japan. We have Sony, we have Siemens in Germany. So if these other big players collaborate with each other, they can bring some change. Another thing is, if we are not talking about virtual reality, but more about these newer emerging technologies, such as augmented or mixed reality, the market is actually very dynamic. So we have startups, for example, Xreal from China or Maison from Japan, who are also leaving their mark here. So I think these companies can take a look at where the bigger players might fall short. I think you remember Mark Zuckerberg's Metaverse announcement, which was a bit of a disappointment. So they can see where Meta failed, despite being a huge company, and look how they could do better.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And what do you think are the main differences if we're talking about Metaverse Japan versus Metaverse Japan, Germany?
Yeah, if you're thinking about comparing the metaverse in Japan and in Germany, we have a longer history of the metaverse in Japan. We have the whole background of ubiquitous computing initiatives in Japan. We have the Tron project at Tokyo University, which dates back as far as the 1980s. And actually, I've been talking a bit about Pokemon Go. We actually had a game very similar to Pokemon Go, but 13 years earlier in 2003, we had Mogi by KDDI, which was a very similar game. And this also brings me to Japan's strong pop culture. We have franchises like Pokemon. And if we are thinking about Pokemon Go, I think nobody would have played it if it didn't have the Pokemon. Like the Pokemon is what sells this game to people. So I think in Japan we have more of a sort of fantastical and very creative metaverse. Whereas in Germany, I've shown you Siemens and the industrial metaverse. So people in Germany tend to be a bit more practical about the metaverse and very critical about the metaverse for fantasy and for entertainment. So I think those are the main differences between those two countries.
Okay. Well, here at the Expo, right? Right now, the theme is designing future society for our lives, right? But how do you think that these metaverse technologies can help us with a more sustainable future?
Yeah, they have a lot of potential actually. I think, Isaac, you already mentioned it in your talk that at the Hanover Expo, people were asking themselves, why should I go there if I have the internet? And I already told you that the Expo brings something similar to social media and the internet to us. So, for example, here we could, in theory, visit the virtual Expo. バーチャル万博を体験した方いらっしゃいますか？少なさそうですね。ちょっと寂しい感じですね。So we could, in theory, reduce travel and thus also reduce emissions caused by travel. Another thing would be, as I said, basically Metaverse being the continuation of social media, and therefore Metaverse enabling people to come together, to achieve common goals, and also to share their interests, which would also be a rather nice thing. And if we're thinking about everyday lives, I mean, we're already using our smartphones in everyday life. So the Metaverse could enable us to use apps like Google Maps or something, basically hands-free. So our lives could become much more practical thanks to the Metaverse.
Mm-hmm. But are there any risks, though, to the Metaverse?
Yeah, so many. There are so many risks. I mean, there are many possibilities, but there are also many risks. And one risk, if we are talking about sustainability and about the environment, one big risk is that the metaverse needs lots of energy. Similarly to artificial intelligence, we need this energy to come from somewhere. And that's why, for example, Google and Microsoft are currently using nuclear reactors, like nuclear energy, to power like their technology. And that's one huge risk of the metaverse. Another risk would be, of course, like the similarity to social media I've been talking so much about. Like on social media, I mean, I think a lot of you know it, we have so many problems like misinformation, we have political radicalization, and we have, of course, also severe cases of cyberbullying. And if the metaverse is basically social media amplified, we also have an amplification of these risks. And another risk I want to talk about is, of course, privacy and data protection. So if we're using the metaverse and if we're wearing like these glasses and headsets, we're wearing cameras on our face 24/7 and the tech companies' vision for the metaverse. And basically we would maybe give all this data to the tech companies, and they would use it to train AI and even more effective AI. And here it gets rather dystopian, so I don't want to ruin your day, so I stop talking about the risks.
Yeah, let's go to the happy place. Here, this just my last question, Nicole. This is beautiful, and that is, I think, the virtual expo. But I have not much heard about the virtual expo. Can you explain why there's not that much advertising for
Yeah,
the
I
expo?
mean, バーチャル万博を体験した方はこちらにもあまりいなさそうですね。There aren't many people who are actually using the virtual expo. Here we see the loading screen. And in theory, it's a really, really nice idea. I mean, NTT Konokyu has worked so hard to bring this to us. But I think maybe one of the problems is that it's only attractive to people who are already interested in gaming, because it looks very cute, very playful, it's very game-like and not so much realistic. I mean, people were maybe, if they heard there would be a digital twin of the expo, they were expecting something very, very realistic. And what we got instead was similar to Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse, which was also criticized for being too cartoon-like, like too colorful, too childish. And another problem, I think, is if we're thinking about the whole like registration infrastructure for the expo. I mean, you have one app to get around, you have another app to do your reservations, then adding another app for the virtual expo, it's just mendokusai, it's just too much. So I think instead of like presenting the virtual expo as a valid alternative, if you maybe didn't get the reservation you wanted for your favorite pavilion, actually the German Pavilion has a very, very nice digital version, digital twin. So I definitely recommend taking a look at that. But here, you could basically tell people, so you didn't get the reservation, but you can still visit the virtual expo, but that didn't happen, unfortunately.
Great. Thank you so much, Nicole. All right, now it's my turn. 私は、はい、そう、私はバーバラです。よろしくお願いします。ありがとう。私は社会学者です。I'm a sociologist, and my current, I'm in family sociology, and I work on marriage, so 結婚 and gender 関係とかいろんなこと。But currently, I'm working on 人と動物の関係です。Right? And particularly on the role of pets in society, mostly in Japan, but I also do that comparatively. じゃあ、最初は誰がペットが飼ってますか？ Okay, 2 people, great. 猫か犬？どっち？犬？猫？2匹？猫1匹。Okay, how many do you have? Ah, good. Great, wonderful. Okay, so there are some pet owners here. All right, so we'll go on, and this is kind of, let me start you with understanding the animal world, right? In how it's mostly thought about in Japan. And so there's 3 main categories of animals, right? So you have the pets, you have, so petto, right? You have the yasei dobutsu, so the livestock animals, and the wild animals. And so what do they provide for us? So I hope you agree with this chart, since most of you are Japanese. So mostly it's tanoshi, right? They bring you entertainment, happiness. The livestock provides you kenko, health. And the wild animals are there for your anshin, for safety and security of the environment. But we have to also, this is our human yakusoku to these different categories of animals. And that's where we kind of differ between Germany and Japan. So on the one hand, you have pets. And what do you have to do as a human? You have to provide them a safe environment, right? And you have to be yasashiku shitemasu. So you have to be kind to them, you have to feed them, give them fresh water a lot, right? So that's like in Germany, you would consider that too. But about yasei dobutsu, so the livestock animals, and that is different. So in Japan, it's like, maybe it's very hard to see, but oishiku itadakimasu, right? So you have to eat them with appetite, or ski-kirai sezu ni taberu, right? So no matter if you like it or not, you should be eating them. And the wool sweater, right, from sheep, seita o taisetsu ni kimasu. And that is quite different in German way of thinking about livestock, because there's a lot of rules and regulations that these animals should not suffer, and we'll get to that in more detail. And so the animals in the, or kachiku, sorry. And so the animals in the wild are, you have to, don't, gomi o dasanai, so don't dirty their environment, and in the wild you be rather quiet, right? All right, so now the question is, which of these animal categories is mostly existing on this planet? It's been like that 100-something years, and it's gotten even worse, because the majority on this planet is the heaviness, if we talk about the weight, the biomass, is livestock animals, right? Kachiku. And that has even increased, where the number of wild animals has significantly decreased, right? And that is not really a sustainable development. So we have to change something. And this is globally, right? Everywhere. All right, just a little bit on comparing Germany and Japan in terms of pets. Well, Japan has 123 million the population, but the population is declining, as you know. Germany has 84 million people. But in terms of cats and dogs, there is 26 million cats and dogs. That makes 44% of Japanese households have a pet. It's much less in Japan. If we talk about cats and dogs, 17 million cats and dogs. And a lot of people talk about that, last year was less than 800,000 children being born in Japan, but more animals being brought into, or more pets being brought new into families. And in total, there's more pets in Japan than children under the age of 15. So just to get you inspired, right? This is what you usually see in Japan, right? Cats and dogs in the cityscape, right? And I took all these pictures in Tokyo. You see lots of people taking pictures, strolling with their dog. And you also see lots of people getting their animal dressed, right? That is a big difference to Germany. In Germany, you would not dress your animal, right? Because we would not consider that this is how that species would live, right? So there's a divide in thinking about what is adequate for a pet. All right, but now is the question. This animal, what do you think? 何ですか? Is this a pet? Is this a livestock? Or is this a wild animal? どっち? Who thinks it's livestock? No. Who thinks it's a pet? Okay, most think it's a pet. And this wild animal. Who thinks it's a wild animal? Okay, so it's like sort of split. Well, in Germany, sichi, it would not be a pet, right? But this gentleman, for him, it's a pet. Now, let's go to the next animal. どう思いますか? It's a pig. So, どっち? どう思いますか? ペット? Okay. And 家畜? No? Oh, yeah. Okay. And 野生動物? Okay. Well, the thing is that probably most of you, if you're not vegetarian, you are eating this, right? But this family does not eat it, right? They bought the pig when it was tiny, micro pig ですよね。でもちょっと大きくなって、なるほど、なるほど。But it continues to be a pet. All right, and now we have this little critter. It's in English, it's a meerkat. And probably the clothes can already tell you that he is a little pet with his Minnie Mouse hat and his backpack on and his clothes. And there's actually a new boom in meerkats in Japan. And again, in Germany, we would not consider that a pet, right? So there's the difference. And Nicole talked already about virtual pets, right? So now this is a not living, but a physical pet, but it's not living. So if Sony Aibo for many is also considered a pet, right? And there's a few more what I call exotic animals that people are having in Tokyo as pets. So monkeys, turtles, and foxes. Another difference in terms of pet regulations between Germany and Japan is what you're allowed to do, let's say, in denja no naka. So in Germany, you can just walk with your leash, take your dog on the train. じゃあ日本はどうですか? それはできる? じゃないんですよね。はい。You have to put this is a cat, but any animal has to be encased. でしょ? This is それもダメですよね。You have to have a lid over it, just like here. And so this is what you see all the time. I don't know if that's the case in Osaka, I would assume. But it's very different to Germany. And people always ask me, so だから子供ですか? And I always say, well, it has a structural element because if you can't take your animal onto a train, just walk your dog, you have to put it in something. だから it's convenient, right? 便利ですよね。だから買い物も下にも入れるとか。So it's both. It's structural and certain cultural element in there too. So だから万博今はペットがいますか? ないですね。So there was a long discussion, and your governor, Yoshimura, he wanted to really have pets here at the Expo, but then it was decided not to have pets here at the Expo, so they are not allowed. Even though, and I've walked around the Expo, there's a lot of pictures of pets, the elephants there at the Thai pavilion, and so lots of the camels in the UAE pavilion and so on, but not real living ones. But maybe you could have brought your Aibo, right? All right, but why am I even doing this? どうして私はその研究してますか? Well, the thing is, as I said, the population in Japan and in Germany, I mean, you know, we have problems. The demographic change is a significant issue, and that impacts society and the economy and so on. So in Japan, the fertility rate is declining, and Japan is aging, right? We have an increase in mental health problems, and as Nicole also mentioned, an increase in the rate of loneliness, right? Kodoku. There's less people getting married, right? 結婚している人も下がってるんですね。So we know from research that pets help. They make you happier. They make you be less lonely. So they help in your well-being. Okay? And for better health, and we have the health pavilion here at the Banpaku as well. All right, so I did a survey here in Japan, and most people told me, yes, my pet is 家族の member, right? Is a family member, or is like my child, or もしかしてパートナーみたい, right? それも言いました。Or 一番いい友達, right? My best friend, that's also something. They are saying that they provide me comfort. So exactly what all the research tells you, 本当にあなたの well-being 幸せに助かる. So they provide comfort, healing, emotional support, a source of energy. They are said to be a part of their life. And one woman who has several animals said, I love them so much, it feels like I gave birth to them myself. Right? But unfortunately, the numbers are a little bit declining in pets. Pets cost money. The economy is doing poorly. So that is an issue. So. And also here, this family I interviewed, and for them, the pet, they don't have, the daughter is not married, so they got a cat, and now the cat is sort of taking on the role also as the grandchild for the grandparents, and certainly provides them happiness. Now, okay, let's just briefly talk about animal politics, just to show you the big difference, right, seiji no koto, between Germany and Japan. So in Germany, we have this animal advocacy party, right? So no to desu ne. And this party takes care of, protects animals, is concerned about the environment, and does politics for humans as well. So does all three. じゃあ、それは、and for all, ペットだけじゃなくて、もう全体の動物。でも日本はそういう動物についてのファイトする党があるんですか? Is there a party that fights for animals? Some politicians, but not really a party. So in Japan, それは覚えてますか? ワンニャン平和党。今年が始まった党だけでもうすぐ壊れた党ですよね。So this party was in Japan only existed for 66日間 right? So only for 66 days it existed. And the focus was petto dake desu. Petto nomi, right? Only pets, right? The German party tries to protect all animals. And there's another party that the Animalism Do, that party is around since 2019. 多分ご存知でしょうか？まだね、でもインターネット調べたらあるんですね。But this party is around since 2019, and they're trying now to be, it's expensive to be a real political party, and they want to fight just like the German party. So we'll see what happens in that respect. All right, so who fights for animals? 誰が動物のためにファイトする？じゃあ、NPO はいろんな NPO がある。There are so many NPOs. でもペットだけの NPO, right? Very, very few just for other animals. So, but what they managed to do, すごいsuccessful. So the important thing is, you know, in the shelter, so 保護猫、保護犬, in Japan they are being killed if they end up in the public shelter. ドイツではなんというそのshelter? It's called Tierheim. And in Germany, killing is not allowed. And so the NPOs try to その殺処分ゼロというスローガンがあるんですよね。But so they've been very successful over the last 10, 15 years. でもまだまだゼロじゃないね。So that's, but they're the ones that are fighting for animals. All right, so with that, thank you very much, and I think Nicole has some questions. Thank you. はい、
お疲れ様です、バーバラ。じゃあ皆様バーバラへのご質問とかコメントはありますでしょうか？ Are there any questions or comments for バーバラ？英語でも日本語でも大丈夫なんですけど、特にペットについての質問は大歓迎ですね。じゃあ、then I will take the liberty to ask the question. Barbara, you were telling us a lot about like the different, basically pet cultures, you could say, in Germany and in Japan. But I was wondering about the legal regulation. なんかペットについての法律は日本とドイツとどうなるかなと思っていました。Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. I'd be glad. And actually, I have a slide for you on that one. はい、違いがあります。ドイツでは動物の権利とか動物福祉という言葉たくさん使ってます。考え方もちょっと違う。But in Japan, you know the term 動物愛護でしょ? And there's no real good translation for 愛護. So it's more the love and protection of animals. But when you think about 愛護, it's always human と動物でしょ? And not the 動物 in itself. Right? The German 考え方 is like it's just the animal, and the animal actually has rights and agency without the human. So, and researchers tell me in Japan that there's really not a theoretical development of the discourse of what that actually means to have, for an animal to have a right. だから動物愛護法を言いますね。So the law is named that way. And the Japanese 動物愛護法は it's only for this one category of animals, for petto. Right? There's nothing for 野生動物, and there's nothing for the 家畜. Right? It's just for pets. And I have, maybe if I can show you something else, this is a global animal protection index. Right? And the better colors are the green, right, and yellow, and the orange and darker is less good, right? There's no country that's perfect, right? But the better animal protection is in Northern Europe. And if we look at that more in detail, for companion animals, this is Germany, so it's a C, right? Austria is pretty good. So Austria, B. でも Japan has a D. でも why is it その farming animal, so 家畜動物 it's the worst grade. But why? right? Why is it the worst grade? Because 法律が全然ない。だから、right? So that's the big difference in a global comparison.
勉強となりました。ありがとうございました。じゃあ次の質問は何か。There aren't many questions from the audience, so I will take another one, I think. In the German Pavilion, of course, but also the Expo as a whole, we are talking a lot about sustainability, about how to create a future worth living for. What about pets and like animals in general and sustainability? I think like the index you showed us is one part of it, but maybe you can explain a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very close relationship, and Franz earlier just showed about energy, right, and sustainability. But I brought you this because the livestock industry, your hamburger, your karaage, right, whatever it is, that unfortunately has a lot of greenhouse gas emissions, right? So particular beef is the highest producer of greenhouse gas emissions. So economists don't look at that issue that much, but in my field, this is a big issue. So thank you.
Yeah, I feel kind of bad, like telling those people why they're enjoying yaki sausage, like German bratwurst. まあ、せっかくなのでわざわざここへお越しになってくださってそのため今日だけ美味しい焼きソーセージを美味しく召し上がってください。ありがとうございます。So maybe another question. Yeah, I mean, in Japan, as I told you when I was talking about digital twin, we have of course a lot of natural disasters. なんか大震災は頻繁にありますけれども、その場合は避難しなきゃいけない場合は大事なペットはどうすればいいでしょうか。その考えはすごく怖いんです。We have a lot of natural disasters in Japan, and if it continues like that, also in Germany, we have floods and everything. So what about your cat if you have to like evacuate very, very quickly? So maybe Barbara, you could give us some peace of mind about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking. Actually, I just want to show a picture of my animals. But in any case, it's very important to think about what to do with your pet. ね、地震があれば、台風があればね、逃げないといけないとき。And the government, since the Hanshin Awaji Daishinsai, so right here, right, 30 years, have been thinking about what to do. And every time there's a large disaster, the government looks again, 何が, you know, いいこと、何が悪いこと, how can we improve, right? And there are so many events in, at least in Tokyo, where you learn about what to do. Every government, the national government, the prefecture government, the local government, on their website, いつもね、その instruction がある、ね、what to do with your pet. So it is, you have to have food for like 3 days, でしょ? I mean, and you have to have water enough for your pet. You have to train your pet to be in a cage for a long time. ね、すごいストレスがあるね。シェルターに行かないときは、ぜひね、怖いでしょ。人間も怖いし、ペットも怖い。だから本当に慣れないといけないね。To live in that, in this little cage. And this is something, as you said, Nicole, in Germany, we don't yet have that much experience of large-scale climate-induced disasters. But there will be more because we know climate change is, happening, and we're going to be seeing more and more disasters. So this is actually one thing where Germany can learn from Japan, because Japan has thought about this for a long time. So this is what I advocate, that Germany looks to Japan and learn from Japan in terms of pets and disaster treatment.
I mean, there are also a lot of other things that Germany can learn from Japan, but I think in the spirit of this like Expo and Pavilion, we should all learn from each other. So I think that wraps it up rather nicely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Hi. So thank you very much. Maybe I'll get my colleagues to all come here on stage right now and stand with me, because this is kind of, we're about to be wrapping it up. So, you know, not everybody has been here throughout the entire time that we've been presenting here, but you heard from Isaac about the history of the Expos and their important relationship to aspects of sustainability. And you heard from Nicole about the development of the Metaverse, which is still in its beginning stages, I would say, right? But it's really developing in lightning speed. And you heard from Franz about the visions of economists, right? About how to make the economy more sustainable by means of this so-called GX, so green transformation. And you just heard from me, right, on the roles of pets in society and the diverse types of animals and the roles that play in society, and from being food to being best friends and family. So just briefly, for those who weren't here in the beginning, we are 4 of a total of 12 researchers at the Deutsche Nihon Kenkyujo, at the German Institute for Japanese Studies. We are located in Tokyo on the campus, 場所は上智キャンパスの中ですね。はい、so 千代田区。We were founded in 1988, so 1988年から、and we're doing research on contemporary Japan, so 現代の日本についての研究。だから37年の歴史ですよね。このではファンスはディレクター私たちのボスです。So we are a government-funded institute, and our government believes that doing research on Japan while being in Japan, right, is really, really important. And not any other country has that. So we're unique in that respect. Now, just to wrap it up, we are talked a lot about sustainability. And now I would like to, and I'd be happy if you have any questions or comments, we would be delighted to talk really one-on-one with you. So please raise your hand if you have any comments or questions. Try our best. 質問があれば、ぜひ日本語でも私たちも日本語で頑張ります答える。But anyway, well, of course, we believe firmly that overall sustainability is there to make the world a better place, right? To make it a more equal place, a more fair place for everybody on this planet. And this Expo is a really great place to encounter all these different cultures and see what every pavilion's, every country's vision is what their situation of living is, what their culture is, and what their vision of the future is. But now I have a question to each of you. So the theme again of this Expo is designing future society for our lives. What does that mean to you? So, for me, oops, there's some paper, right? So for me, actually, the thing is that I believe we have to, if we want to be sustainable, we have to not just think of humans, but we do have to be that inclusive that we also include all animals of this planet in our thinking of sustainability. But Nicole, maybe.
難しい. That's a really tough question. I mean, if it would be that easy, maybe we would all have already done it. But if I'm thinking about sustainability, I think it's really about not buying sustainably produced things or anything, but really thinking about, do I need that thing? And I mean, of course, it may seem contradictory because I've been showing you these shiny headset and these fancy new tech, but I think in some sense, technology can really help to change society. Not only if we're thinking about virtual pets or anything, but if we are thinking about how much the internet has changed or lives or interaction with other people. I mean, even if I'm not in Japan, I can still talk to my Japanese friends, and I can FaceTime then and everything. And I think here, technology can really help to basically change how we view things. And I think that's something very important to basically create a livable future for everybody.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I think there are a few different things. One is learning from the past. So not forgetting what's happened in the past, but learning from the past. Another is treasuring our communities and our interpersonal communications, not just at the small level, but even in this kind of community setting within the Expo. And a third is not just thinking about the next day, the next year, but thinking about the next generation. だから大事なのが歴史から学ぶこと、そして自分のコミュニティを大切にすること、そしてこの万博みたいな機会でも人との触れ合いを大切にすること。で次は目先のことだけじゃなくて、次の世代のこと、次の世代のことをすでに考えることが大事だと思います。
So yeah, a lot of important things have been said, but not by everybody. Let me add to this. I also think, and that's part of our research philosophy, that's important since we are facing very complex issues, that we exchange ideas and perspectives. Yeah, and we can only improve our own approach, our own strategy by incorporating these different perspectives that we get by exchanging our ideas with others. So I think not only the Expo, but also academic exchanges, but also other places where people from different backgrounds can meet and talk to each other are very important and the basis for moving forward. And so in that sense, I think we're very happy to have the opportunity to also engage with you. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you all here on the podium with me. Thank you, Franz. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Isaac. And of course, thank you all for listening in. If you want to know more about the question on sustainability, oh, don't go too far, yeah. But I wanted to point you out, head over to our YouTube channel. We have many lectures on that particular important issue, of course, on other issues as well. And this is our brand new series that came from a conference that we did last year in Berlin. And you see all of us giving talks in these YouTube videos. Anyway, with that, I would like to say, and じゃあ最初は日本語で、今日は来てくださって本当にありがとうございました。ドイツパビリオンやエクスポに残る時間、ね、もうだいぶ5時半になるんですけど、どうぞ楽しんでください。Right? I hope you have a wonderful, fantastic rest of your stay here at the Expo. It's really, I'm so happy to be here in this space and that we could share a little bit of our research with you. And definitely, if you are in Tokyo and if you're at all interested in what we do, どうぞ東京にいるときはぜひドイツ日本研究所に来てください。はい。And with that, ありがとうございました。